be an awesome deal. Absolutely, it's an awesome deal. Yeah? But if you didn't know how much money they were making on it, you just don't know how much more you could have gotten off. Does that make sense? So they're selling to us for $1, but they're making money somewhere. Now, who's in an industry that produces some kind of item or product and does wholesale? Yes? What do you do?
I work for Mars, as in Mars Bars.
Mars Bars. Mars is in Mars Bars. Okay. And do you wholesale and sell these products out to retailers?
Yes, the Woolworths, Coles.
Okay. How much percentage profit does your company make on the product?
It's probably some of the better performing ones would be about 15 to 20%.
15 to 20%. Yep. Okay. That's not too bad. I was expecting a lot more. I was expecting a bit more.
Yeah, Coles and Woolworths make it really hard.
Coles and Woolworths make it really hard? Yeah. Anyone else in a yes, sir?
Manufacture wind socks.
You manufacture wind socks. Okay, great. How much profit do you make on the wind socks?
Double our cost.
Double. So 200, yeah, 100%. Yeah. So if someone offered you a product and you got 25% off or 30% off, you'd think, fabulous. Yeah? But you didn't know that he made 100% profit on it. If you knew, would you be able to negotiate a better deal?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, with examples of this Coke, if we did not know how much these wholesalers were making, we had no knowledge about that, then we wouldn't know how to go a step further and go straight to the manufacturers who produce this thing and sell it for 50 cents each. Going from $4.50 down to 50 cents, who thinks that's an amazing deal? Now, at that price, would you be finding other people to sell this to? And would you be charging you $2 each to everything you send? Absolutely. And are they still getting a good deal?
Yes.
Absolutely, they're getting a good deal. You're not ripping them off. You did all the work. You did all the research. You found out all the information. And you created that relationship with the manufacturer. Does that make sense? Yes. So it's the same for property. If you understand the product cycle, if you understand how these properties come about and what goes into it, you will have more power into be able to create more profit. All right? What's even better? What if I ordered 10,000 units of Coke to distribute to some music festival or other? I charged everyone $2 each when other people would have charged them $4.50. And I told Coke, well, I don't want to pay you right now. I want to pay you later for that. Is that okay? So I didn't have to put my own money in to buy the Coke in the first place. I just needed to sell it. And then with the profits I made, I paid Coke back. Who thinks that would be fabulous? You can do this with property. Believe it or not. It can be done. It's done every day. I'm going to show you how to do that. So putting the deal together is the money. This is where the money's created. It's not in the bricklaying. It's not in the construction. It's not in the painting of the walls. It's in putting the deal together so you know when to sell, what to sell it for, and understanding the process. Does that make sense? So you've got to become the property connector, or the deal maker is the connector. You find out what people want and need, you find the product that they're looking for, and you introduce them. It's as simple as that. That's all you're doing, is connecting these people, and there's money to be made in that, and you don't have to spend a single dollar from your own pocket. Okay, so here are the 7 main steps for property development. First is to find a site. Second is site analysis. Third is financial feasibility. Fourth is financing. And fifth is plans approved. 6 is construction. And finally, the 7th step is selling. You can make money from every single step of this process. This is the product sales, the product process for property. The product cycle, rather, for property. Every single step, there's a buck to be made, if not millions of bucks to be made. You just have to understand it. So pick your step and start making some money. Now let's go through the steps in a little bit more detail. The first one is finding a site. Now, to find a site for development, you need the right tools. Now, a lot of these tools can come to you for free. All you need is a little bit of brains, a little bit of creativity, and a lot of enthusiasm. Have you got that?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. So how do we find sites? Well, the typical thing is to look the sites up in the paper. But I'm telling you now, don't go to Domain. Okay? You've got to go to the commercial business section of the paper. Okay? And that's probably the place where many amateurs don't look. It's in the commercial section of the paper, the business section of the paper, and you'll see a whole load of property developments up for advertisement. You'll see a whole load of people advertising on there saying developments wanted. All it takes for you to make money from site finding is picking up the phone and calling each of them and finding out what they've got. That's all it is. Pick up the phone, call each of them, find out what have you got, what's selling, what can be done on that property, do you know? How much is it for, when do they want to sell it by, what are the circumstances of the vendor that's selling it? That's all it is. All you're doing is paying for the phone calls. Because if you get a site together that seems somewhat interesting, you are then able to on-sell that to a developer that is interested. Because I'm telling you now, most developers do not have the time to look for sites. I know a ton of them. And none of them have the time to look for sites because they're too busy developing. But here's the thing with developers. If they don't continue to develop, their money stops. Does that make sense? So they're always getting other people to look for sites for them. And on an average example, you can get paid $35,000 on a low-end example just by finding a site. And I'll show you an example later of how that really worked for one of our clients or one of our students. You didn't need to do anything aside from make a few phone calls and find the actual deal. The other way to find a site is to speak to local real estate agents. Ask them what's going on in the area. Another way is to speak to council. Councils usually know what's going on in the area, and they usually know what they want built in the area too. So they've got an idea of what's going on there, and you could get some really good sites from them. Speak to finance brokers. Finance brokers are always seeing deals that can't go through because the developer doesn't match the deal. But it doesn't mean it's not a deal. So finance brokers might be able to give you a lead to a deal that you would like, that you could on-sell to someone else. Yeah? Look things up on RP data. That's a fantastic way of finding sites. Most of these are cheap and easy for you to do. Now, the cheapest way and one of the best ways to find sites is to use these two things. Your legs. Go out, go for a walk. I bet you will go home and you'll find many, many sites. Development sites, things that have potential to be built up, things that have potential to become more than what it already is. And the reason why you've not noticed it before is because you weren't looking. You know, it's that old thing that when you buy a car, let's say you buy a Mazda 3, and this is your first car, your first Mazda 3, and as soon as you buy it, you notice every other person has Mazda 3s. Does that make sense? Because you were looking for it, you became aware of it. It's the same for property. If you start looking, you will find them. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I'll be finding them. So am I looking for vacant blocks of land or what? Or houses that are about to fall over? No. What you're looking for, well, yes, you are, sorry. But also what you're looking for is, you know, when you walk down the street and you see, let's say, a fibre house or 2 or 3 fibre houses and they're sandwiched between 2 or 3 unit developments? Yeah, do you see those? It means that in that same street they have the potential to put up units. So those 3 houses and blocks of lands could be units. They could multiply their purpose. So that's one way of looking at things. So walk down the street, look at the street and go and find out, okay, well, what's going on here? Sometimes you'll also find 2-story houses, let's say, oh no, a 1-story house sandwiched between 2 2-story houses. Yeah? That gives you an idea that there's the development potential for that 1 single-story house to be recreated into a 2-story house and create more value. Does that make sense? Get out there. walk, start looking. There are thousands of these opportunities right at your doorstep, I guarantee you. I absolutely guarantee you. As soon as your eyes are open, you'll be finding them. And it's as simple as that. Find out what those properties are, look them up on RP data, or ask local real estate agents, or ask the council about them. Then you could then use that site and on-sell it to someone who's interested in developing and make money like that. That's all you had to do. Does that sound good? Yes. Yay. All right. Here's another way you can, I did mention earlier, you can go to council. There's maps and council plans here. These are examples of it. So if you go to council and find out what can go on in the area, they'll be able to tell you, and you'll be able to find the properties that in those areas are sort of outdated and have the opportunity for more potential. So here's an example of a site, of finding a site and making money on finding a site. Does anyone know where Toronto is? Not Canada. Here in Australia. Yeah, okay. Yes, fabulous, fabulous. So we've got a development going on in Toronto. It's one of our newest developments. It only started a few weeks ago. Now, this particular development was found by one of our students, okay? Because we don't have time to go out and do all this site finding, because all we're doing is developing and educating. Does that make sense? Yeah, so one of our students found this place. It was an unfinished development site, so it had already started, and it was to be built 17 townhouses. Like I said, it was found by our student. 10 of those townhouses are already built. 7 are incomplete. But the developer that was building them didn't have enough money to continue developing, and he can't sell it as individual houses because he hasn't paid for the subdivisions, etc. Does that make sense? Yeah? So he had to sell it as an incomplete development. Now, for the wrong people, this isn't a good deal for them, because there's a lot of work that's gone into it. It costs a lot of money to get into, because we've got to come in halfway, we've got to get banks involved, yada, yada, yada. Our student found this site. We did the research on the property, we did the negotiations on the property. We found out that the 10 properties that are complete already are already worth $4 million. So what more would it be worth if we completed the other 7? We offered the vendor only $2.7 million. But because of his circumstances and because it was the right deal, he accepted that. And we paid our student $100,000 for finding this deal. He did not get involved. He didn't have to do anything. He found the deal for us, called us, showed us the numbers. Boom, 100 grand in his bank account as soon as we bought it. Who would like an easy 100 grand? Ka-ching! Absolutely. Yes, we are here looking for sites. So if you've got sites, definitely something that you can make money on. All you need to do is start networking, start talking, and do a lot of walking. Well, not a lot, even just a little bit. Yeah? Toronto is near Newcastle in New South Wales. That's right. Okay, so the step 2 is site analysis. Now, we don't want to get to the end of construction and find out that our properties won't sell. That'd be a little bit dangerous. Would you agree? That would scare me personally. Yeah? So we want to make the right analysis on the property. We want to do the research to make sure that this property will actually sell. And the way to do this is by talking to council and making sure that the properties that you're about to build suit the area, they will be beneficial to the area, which means that it's very likely that they'll be more sellable in the area as well. Does that make sense? Yeah, so town planners do this. And town planners, if you become a property developer, they've got to be your best friend. Okay? They will tell you what's needed and wanted in that area and what's going to be the best outcome for that particular area, because that's their job. If you get it right the first time, the easier your development will be. Step 3 is the financial feasibility. Now, feasibility is all about the profits, because we're here to make money, aren't we? Yes. Absolutely. So, financial feasibility, look how short I am. You can't even see me behind this thing. And this is with heels. Cheers, Louise. Okay, I couldn't see you guys walking past there. All right, so it's all about the profits. Now, we will make more profits if we can create more usage for the property. Does that make sense? Yeah. Great. So we want to maximize the use of the property, but we'll need to use software to do this. The reason why, you can definitely do feasibility on a piece of paper and napkin and use your own common sense, but it's important that you use the right software, because software allows us to remember things that we may have forgotten, costs, fees, contingency amounts that we may have forgotten to implement. So you do need to use software to get these numbers right. Your minimum profit should be about 20%. Why? Because this is what the banks look for. Actually, that's not, I have a finance company, and I do this on an everyday basis. They will accept less, okay? But here's the thing. If they only accept 15%, and your profitability sits at 15%, and you made some sort of error, minor error in the numbers, and you drop below that 15%, you're in danger territory. Does that make sense? Go for 20. Make sure your profit margin is around the 20 mark, so if you drop a little bit, it's not too bad. Yeah? And lastly, how do you maximize the usage of the property to improve the feasibility? You get your architect to help you out. So you get your architect to look at the property and say, well, what can I fit on here? And they will even work out the feasibility with you and check your numbers for you. Okay? Maximize the use of the property without compromise. Why do I say that? Is because some developers decide to squeeze every single thing that they can on one development. But then you end up with all these properties that pass council guidelines, however, don't sell. Yeah? You want to make sure that you're not developing studio apartments in a rural country area. Yeah? Because people there like space, right? So you want to maximize the use of the property, but you don't want to compromise its integrity, because you want it to be a property that's going to be wonderful, it's going to sell, and of good quality. So here's an example of what I mean by maximizing the use of the property. Let's say here's your land, and this is actually an example of one of ones that we did. And we decided we want to build properties on there. We thought originally our plans were to have 25 dwellings. However, when we did the numbers and checked the feasibility again and again and again, 25 dwellings would mean that we would have no profit. So it's not really a deal. Yeah? But we got the architect in and said, well, what can you do? How much more can you stretch this? And he said to us, well, you can actually build 39 dwellings. But when we looked over the plans, 7 of those dwellings were going to be little studio apartments about this big. All right? And it would mean we could put more on the property, but I don't think that studio apartments about this big would sell very well. Do you? No. So we went with 32 dwellings instead, and then we got profits of over $2 million. That's a good deal. Yeah? So we stretched out the property just by doing some architectural changes from 25 dwellings to 32 dwellings. We were able to maximize, we didn't compromise the integrity of the property. In fact, we made a whole load of profit. Step 4 is financing. Now, I recommend that you use commercial finance for any development sort of over the 4 houses or 4 unit mark. Okay? And why is it called commercial finance? It's called that because it's property development is a business by nature. Okay? It doesn't mean that you're investing in commercial properties. It just means that what you're doing is a business. Thus, you use commercial finance. However, in this business, we're not making any money. There's no cash flow. Do you get that? Because we don't get our money till the end of the deal. Would you agree? We don't get our money till the end when we sell. Yeah? So, what commercial finance allows us to do is it allows us to accrue the interest. Mean to say we don't need to make monthly repayments and pay the interest on a monthly basis. We can accrue the interest, and at the end of the development, when we sell, we use our profits to pay the interest to the bank. That's why they're usually shorter term loans as well, because the bank might want their money back too. Many developments would not go ahead if it wasn't for capitalized interest, which is what I just described to you. Does that make sense? Okay, now, if you remember the Coke example, where I said, well, what if we could get all that Coke, sell it, and then pay the Coke factory? This is what you can do with development or with properties as well, using commercial finance. Now, commercial finance has a higher interest rate. But I tell you what, it doesn't matter if you're not paying on a monthly basis, would you agree? How less stressful would it be if you didn't have to find where you're going to get the money to pay every month? Because I tell you, property development, you're not probably paying a mortgage of $400,000, you're probably paying off a couple of million. Yeah? So wouldn't it be fantastic if you could pay at the end of the deal? And wouldn't it be even better if you already knew you had some properties sold, so you've guaranteed that you could pay it off? That's like, there's no risk in that, is there? Okay, great. Now, commercial finance, in this market, you can borrow anywhere between 50 to 70% of the value of the property. The other step in financing is creative finance. Now, what I mean by creative finance, the perfect example of creative finance is vendor finance. Who's heard of vendor finance before? Okay, great. So some of you have. What if you could buy a property and not have to put any of your own money in? Would that be exciting? Yeah. I've bought every single one of my properties with no money at all. In fact, when I started, it was at the age of 22. I had no money. In fact, I was in debt for $898.87 for phone calls back to the Philippines. I was earning an income of $27,000, doing a job as a data entry person because the only jobs that were offered to me were to be data entry or a cleaner. I didn't want to be a cleaner because the other thing that I had going for me was my biggest asset base, which was my shoe collection. And there was nothing in that fitted cleaning. Okay? So I decided I'm going to go out there, make loads of money, and it's going to be property. Why? Because property's pretty. You can touch it. You can see it. Girls understand what I'm saying. Yep. Yep. It's not that I don't like shares. I do like shares, but property is pretty. Yeah? And you get starry-eyed and you start dreaming of what you can do, even if you're never going to live there. Yeah? So I decided property was going to be my thing. Within 6 months, I immersed myself in education, seminars much like this, did my own research, and within 6 months I bought my first 5 properties with no money at all, not a single dollar from my own pocket. Who thinks that could be powerful in their lives? Yes. Yeah. My properties were worth over $2 million. I was still 22 years old. Okay? And one of the ways to do this is using vendor finance. Yeah? Vendor finance is gold if you know how to do it.